Okay, so Amy, thank you for joining me today and for your time. So this little video is basically all about me speaking to the teachers who teach at the studio and finding out their journey into yoga and trying to kind of tell people who maybe don't do yoga or people
Yeah.
who are thinking about doing their yoga teacher training that it is accessible for everybody and that anyone can do it. So I think it's really important first to share about your journey into yoga. So when did you start yoga?
Um, I started yoga only a couple of years ago. To be honest, I went to my first class out of complete curiosity. I was typically sort of running, going to the gym, and doing stuff that sort of made me feel like physically healthy, and my mind was sort of felt good after exercise. But I went to my first yoga class just because I thought, oh, I'm just going to give it a go, and didn't expect anything from it at all. So it was just at my local health club, and the teacher was actually really amazing, and she inspired me to continue going. And it then soon became something that I really needed to do. It wasn't just like, oh, I'll attend that class this week. I was like, I really need this now. And me being me, I thought I want to learn everything about yoga, so I'm going to go and find a yoga teacher training course and learn more about it. Not expecting to teach at that point, just to learn more, and try and sort of I think in my head I was like, oh, I want to be able to do like the most amazing poses and amazing asanas, and actually obviously quickly discovered that that's not what it was about at all. So yeah, for me it was pure curiosity as the first reason that I sort of attended my first class, and then quickly fell in love.
Yeah, so how did you find us then? Because you obviously did it at your local gym, but you're quite local
Yeah,
to us, aren't you?
yeah, I am. I'm Worcester based. So it wasn't until I'd attended classes regularly, sort of weekly, and I just looked online to see sort of where in Worcester I could start the teacher training. And Spetchley Gardens is beautiful. It's like the most gorgeous place that if you think about any sort of yoga retreat, you would think of somewhere like Spetchley Gardens, like beautiful countryside. And the studio is gorgeous. It's such a nice environment to be in. So there was loads of sort of offerings, but I instantly sort of thought, oh, this is where I want to do it. And then initially I had thought about doing the intensive course, because I am that learner that needs that sort of in-person kind of presence. But it just wasn't doable with family and work. And I thought maybe I could make it work, but actually I was like, oh, I really want to give my everything to it. So ended up doing the hybrid, which meant I had both, so I could do the online learning and attend the sort of calls, but also get some in-person kind of teaching experience as well. So I did the hybrid, and we had, I think, 6 sessions like at the studio, which were definitely the highlight for me, sort of on the course. But the calls were amazing. You learnt so much just in that sort of kind of relatively small amount of time, just in those kind of couple of hours. So yeah, it worked perfectly for me.
And that's what I was saying is you're such a perfect example of how the like system works because I think it's really interesting. I mean, people most of the time in an ideal world they'd want to do an in-person training, but also
Yeah,
most of the time we don't live in an ideal world and people
yeah, we're too
either
busy.
have we're too busy. Everyone is too
Yeah,
busy. So people either have kids or if they're older than having kids and they're looking after parents or they're caring for someone or most people have a full-time job or there is always a reason why we can't do that in-person training. Um, and so, you have seen in the online training, we had, people from Europe doing it, but we've also got people
yeah,
like yourselves who are, 10 minutes from the studio, but
yeah.
still doing the online training because it works better around their life. And I think that's why the hybrid does work really, really well, because you do get the best of both. And it's
Yeah,
interesting because you'll be able to kind of testify to this as well. When people sign up to the hybrid, they're always like, I'm definitely going to attend the hybrid meetings. But then in the hybrid meetings, they're always quite like intimate. They're quite small
Yeah,
groups because, and I think initially I was like, what's going on here? And then I was like, actually, I think that's a really good thing in a way because it shows how much you get from the online training that actually a lot of people feel like they don't even need the in-person
yeah,
as much as they thought they would. But
yeah.
they're there if you want them. And when they are there, it is like a mini in-person training, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think for anyone that was in sort of my position that actually does sort of prefer that kind of in-person training, I really needed that. Whereas, like you said, many of the people doing it online were getting enough from it. I felt like I needed that kind of that in studio sort of practice.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it meant that the groups were actually quite small and but even if you couldn't get to it, you still were able to sort of get the information from the online anyway. So yeah, it definitely gives the best of both.
Yeah, and then so I remember like speaking to you when you were first signing up and you were quite clear on that, like I don't think I want to teach, like I'm just gonna,
Yeah.
yeah. And then what's happened is that, I mean, your exam was amazing. I remember like watching that and being like, oh, she needs to teach, like she's so good. And then you did the mentorship program. So we offer the mentorship
Yeah.
program basically as a way when people graduate a 200 hour, you want to focus on getting your experience up at teaching. In a lot of the time, you don't want to worry about marketing for classes, filling a village hall, finding classes, which can take months, and then you have a
Hmm.
practice and you feel a bit rusty. So we just go, right, here's the studio, free classes. So they get pretty busy and you're not paid. So there's no pressure and off you go, do your
Yeah.
worst. And that all followed plan so perfectly for you because, and I remember speaking to you on the phone. I was walking around
Hmm.
and you were like, I don't know whether to do the mentorship or not. And I was like, most people find it like the thing that means that they do teach versus
Yeah.
those who then don't do that sometimes don't teach because it's hard to get started.
Yeah.
And now you teach at the studio regularly, right?
Yeah, and that is literally sums the whole thing up. I think after so qualified in March last year, and I was quite confident in terms of um, what I could teach in a small sort of 15-minute snippet after loads and loads of practice, but actually teaching in front of students and teaching a 60-minute class was something that I was like, oh, I'm not ready for that. Um, and I couldn't believe actually just from that 6 weeks mentorship, like how I transformed in terms of teaching in the studio. That for me was a massive turning point. So I mean, obviously the 6 months and kind of all of the learning and the practice that came with that was amazing. But those 6 weeks of teaching for me were like pivotal.
Yeah.
And I definitely don't think I would be teaching in any capacity if I hadn't done the mentorship. And that's just me because I need that sort of kind of I guess in person sort
Yeah.
of teaching in front of people in order to kind of feel confident enough to do it. But yeah, I would 100% recommend that.
Yeah, it is interesting. It's so individual because there are, people do the online training and then they go off and teach, and not everybody needs the hybrid, but those
Yeah,
who take it do seem to absolutely love it. It doesn't always, like the numbers aren't always there to then keep the class on permanently, but yours
yeah,
were, and so it's so lovely. Like we had this moment the other day, didn't we? We had the like teachers photo shoot at the
yeah,
studio, and I just
yeah,
you were there because you're on the
yeah.
team, and I was like, this has been such an amazing journey to like
Oh, it
meet you on
has.
the phone, and now you're
Yeah,
here.
I know. And I had the amazing opportunity to cover one of the existing classes as well, because one of the other teachers was having an operation, Greg, and he's got like prime Thursday night, 6 p.m. slot. And you were really kind enough to sort of offer me that. And that again was huge for my sort of development because I thought, oh my God, I'm taking a class that's usually full,
Yeah.
like 18 people. And sort of I'd already done my sort of 4 or 5 weeks on my initial
Yeah.
slot, and then when I took over that I was like, oh gosh, this is even better, like this is great. So and then you meet all the wonderful people in the studio, and then oh, it's so nice. and loved it. And the photo shoot was such a great opportunity to like meet everyone and sort of build on that community. It was really, really good.
Yeah, because we had our Christmas dinner, didn't we? Had our
Yeah,
and then we had our photo shoot. So it
yeah, it's
feels
very
like
nicely
you're like,
timed.
yeah, or even part of the furniture now, Amy.
Yeah, I
It's
know,
so nice.
I did, and I've definitely connected with a few of the other teachers that I sort of cross over with on a Thursday. 'Cause it's a busy night on a Thursday. We've sort of got like three classes, so me and Greg have a little laugh before I go into class, and then he sort of takes over. Then it's six, and then sometimes I stay on for his, sometimes he does mine, and then we see Jules. It's really nice. It's really
Yeah,
lovely.
it's such a tight group. It is. It is.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's really, really nice.
So what then? What is your favorite bit? Oh no, let's start with what was your biggest learning from your teacher training, do you think?
Definitely that you don't have to be the best at yoga.
Hmm.
You really don't. Like for me, I was very much going into it, not necessarily wanting to teach, but just to increase my flexibility and try and do new poses. And it was all about that for me at the beginning. It was very much like, this is, I want to nail the asanas and I want to get my alignment and I want to know exactly like where my foot needs to be and my arm needs to be. And it was all based around that, like the physical part, because that is me generally, and less about sort of that kind of like mind body connection. And I soon realized that actually that's such a tiny part of it. Like the rest, there is so much to work on and to learn in terms of kind of the eight limbs of yoga and how the philosophy and the history and everything is such a huge part of yoga and practice. And there is no there is no end like to your learning, is there? It just continues. And at first that was quite a lot for me, like seeing how much content that was just for the initial sort of course. And I was like, how am I going to learn this? But actually the way it was broken down into the sessions was really was much more manageable. And I still remember um, driving to work, and I'd have the bare bone sequence on repeat in my car. And that content that is available online was amazing. Like that, and you can do classes. There's loads of classes on there, different styles of yoga, and then all of the kind of content that that you need. So having that obviously available at any point was really good, and obviously I could just listen to any of the uploaded content from you sort of again in the car on the way to work, if I was going for a walk. I just ping it on and it just sort of reminds you constantly. I don't know whether I answered your question then.
Yeah, you did. You totally did. And that's yeah, that is so nice for people to hear, I think, how like accessible the material is. And like we've been doing it for years now. So whenever there's anything missing and everyone's or anyone's like, oh, I just this
Yeah,
isn't really sinking in, can you do it another way? Just like keep
yeah.
uploading stuff to the platform, which is great. But and what about like any kind of personal lessons? Like for me in my teacher training, it was all about like perfectionism. I was like, all right, okay, that's
Mm.
the thing I need to let go of. Because obviously you came to it quite practically with like the fitness side, but when you did the like more psychology and the philosophy, was there like something stand out that you were like, okay,
Yeah, I think dropping that perfectionism and just being present, I find it exceptionally difficult to do that now. And it's still something that I work on all the time. And I feel quite comfortable teaching that in a class, but I also need to remind myself that actually, yeah, I need to listen to this as well and listening to my body more. Um, but yeah, that perfectionism was a big thing for me, and that knowing that I kind of strive to do everything to the absolute extreme, and actually nobody really cares. Like it really like it's about when you're teaching and when you're practicing, it's about them as well. It's about your students and reading the room and making feel people feel comfortable. And it's actually not about what I'm doing. And actually, one testing class I had as I was putting the mats out. and it was a busy, like, it was a full class, and I was putting the mats out, and all of a sudden I sort of jolted my back, and I was like, oh shit, what am I going to do? And everybody started coming into the class, and it was getting stiffer and stiffer, and I was like, oh my god, like, what, I'm not going to be able to teach this class. But it was too late to sort of not to cancel it. And that was a massive learning curve for me, because I had to teach the class and not demonstrate. Not I didn't do a single demonstration in the class. I just spoke to the room and taught the class for the whole 60 minutes, without a single sort of demonstration. So again, that was something that I never thought I'd be able to achieve. And it was something that I was really proud of at the end. I was like, oh, I just managed to teach that entire class without moving at all, like on my mat. I obviously told the class why I wasn't doing that.
Yeah, totally. But I think that's also testament to like the building blocks. You know, you've got the point to point, you've got your true north alignment.
Yeah,
You know, we really encourage, don't we? Like, don't demo too much because you want
yeah,
them to
exactly.
feel where they are in their body. But as a new teacher, it's really hard, like, to rely on your language alone. So
Yeah,
it's just easier to jump into the poses. I mean, God, when I was pregnant, I learned that, right? They say
yeah,
when you're injured or when you're pregnant and you try and teach yoga because you can't demonstrate, like, ups your language game, like, to another
absolutely.
level.
Definitely. And I think, for some people that are new to yoga as well, I think they like that
Yeah.
demonstration. But then when you can't, and that when the point to point then becomes really, really crucial, for them to understand sort of where they need to move. And also spending a lot more time sharing in the class to kind of feel not sort of overly have to kind of say too much. But again, when you are demoing, you can come in and out of talking. But when you're not, you do. I was kind of forced into sort of sharing more, which is something that again I found, um, possibly that's kind of the area that I need to work on when I'm teaching a bit more. And again, working on that, and not demoing was really good and helpful.
Funny what we get sent, right? These
I know.
challenges that like force us to grow in different areas. And are you doing both assisting and yin? You're doing some continuing
Yes, yeah,
education.
so that's
Yeah,
coming up.
exactly.
Really looking forward to that. Can't wait to get my hands on people.
Yeah.
Um, that's something that obviously when I'm teaching now, I obviously can't do, but especially sort of in alignment, I'd like to be able to sort of kind of help people feel the asana, and make sure that they're kind of positioning themselves correctly and their alignment is on point. So and then yin, for me, I don't know whether I'd actually like to teach yin. Maybe I
You've said that
will.
before.
Yeah, yeah, you have heard that before. Um, but for me, I'm just like, oh, it's like 3 days worth of, it's 3 days, right? It's three
Yeah,
days
it's a
of
retreat.
just kind of like resetting a little bit, and just like having a nice little retreat, like yoga little retreat with Becky.
It is. Yeah.
So yeah, both of those really looking forward to that coming up. So
Yeah, and that's magic because what tends to happen is, like we spoke about, people doing online training, or maybe they do manage to get to the in-person trainings, and then everyone comes together for continued education. So then
yeah,
it's like assisting comes up, which is usually the first one. Assisting used to be in a 200 hour, but since COVID, since the Me Too movement, like there's just so much content that it takes away too much of the core content from a 200 hour now.
yeah,
That's now our separate assisting training, but it's often the first time that like all the groups come together for like the next stage of their journey. And actually, it used to be shoved into the 200 hour, and I say shoved in because it was mad. It was like,
yeah,
imagine, like all the content that you had with point to point, true north, like sharing, trying to get your practice teaching and trying to know the
yeah,
assist. It's so much. It's very
yeah,
overwhelming. So we actually had, funnily enough, we had people like on our first assisting training who did their 200 hour like years ago that came back to refresh assisting because they were like, it was just too much to all take in at once.
yeah,
So we split it out, and now, yeah, everyone comes together and they like share their experience of, their version of their 200 hour and what year they graduated, and then they all come in
mm.
the assisting program. Is hilarious because it's basically just this like practice room of like when you put your hand in the wrong place and you like position yourself in the wrong place and like everything
yeah,
is wrong as it should do in that room. Like,
yeah.
so that we don't do all of that when we're then in the public class. But it is just hilarious. You know, you're grabbing things
Oh,
at the right. It's very funny. So
yeah, I
that
can't
is a really
wait.
fun weekend. And then yeah, Yin is going to be beautiful. It's so restorative, and yeah, you'll be with Becky, so there'll be all that magic in there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you've got some great stuff to look forward to, and you're going to meet like all these different people from all the different trainings, which is so lovely when it all comes together. So where can people find your teaching now, Amy?
So I teach at 5 p.m. And it's a slow vinyasa, and it's 45-minute class. So you pack a lot in into the 45 minutes. And yeah, it's going really, really well. Really loving it. I teach a little bit of cover sort of here and there as well. So I pop up at different times during different months. But yeah, my regular class is a Thursday at 5.
And you teach elsewhere as well, right? So you have managed to like make
Yes.
much more of your income.
Yes, now I do. I teach at another local studio in Worcester, and I teach there twice a week. So a Sunday and a Monday. I've been there this morning. So yeah, if you'd said this to me this time last year, I really wouldn't have thought that I would be teaching. I just qualified, or yeah, in a couple of weeks. So it wasn't something that I didn't intended. It just happened, and now I'm like, oh, could I squeeze another one in somewhere? Could I do
Yeah.
that? And I do. I actually taught recently a hot yoga class in it's a friend of mine that teaches hot yoga in a hot pod like franchise up in Leamington Spa. So I taught there for the first time recently, and that was again really amazing to teach in the heat. It's quite a different experience. So yeah, just trying to get my hands on lots of different teaching opportunities, which is really good.
Amazing. Well, you're absolutely nailing it. And as I say, you're like the perfect example of like how it all fits together. So yeah, a massive
Oh,
well
thank
done.
you.
And definitely go to Amy's classes. She's a wonderful teacher. And yeah, we hope that they all come and see you soon.
Oh, thanks very much.